former vice president and self-styled inventor of the internet Al Gore, infamous primarily for his many debunked prophecies about global warming doom, is demanding that humanity fork over another $15 trillion to supposedly save the planet from alleged man-made climate change. In a report produced by his new group of crony capitalists and tax-funded climate alarmists, dubbed the Energy Transitions Commission, etc., Gore and his allies demand as much as $600 billion annually for decades to help meet the goals laid out in the collapsing United Nations pseudo-treaty on climate known as the Paris Agreement. Critics, though, ridiculed Gore and his cronies, suggesting this was merely their latest scam to fleece taxpayers around the globe. The etc., which despite its official-sounding name has no formal ties to government, is backed by and made up of investors, big oil bosses, energy companies, fringe climate activists, megabanks, UN bureaucrats, Chinese communists, academics, and other self-interested cronies. In short, it is an alliance hoping to profit from the imploding climate scare by putting a global government-mandated price on emissions of the essential gas carbon dioxide, exhaled by people and known to scientists as the gas of life. Despite all of the hysteria pushed by profiteers such as Gore, human emissions of CO2 make up a fraction of 1% of all the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. But by being able to tax and regulate it, governments and their big business allies will make a fortune at humanity's expense. In their report, though, the etc. bosses, calling themselves commissioners, claim to have more noble goals in mind. Our aim is to accelerate change towards low-carbon energy systems that enable robust economic development and limit the rise in global temperature to well below 2 degrees Celsius, the etc. report said, as if it had any idea how or whether limiting CO2 emissions would affect global temperatures. Ironically, all 73 UN climate models predicted warming as CO2 concentrations increased, but temperatures have remained virtually flat for more than 2 decades, according to satellite and weather balloon data. The massive error has led more than a few of the world's leading scientists to reject the increasingly discredited anthropogenic global warming theory. Leading scientists have explained repeatedly that the planet is currently starving for more CO2. We've heard that CO2 is a demon molecule that causes global warming, explained leading climate realist Dr. William Happer, a prominent professor of physics at Princeton University, at a recent conference by Freedom Force International dubbed global warming, an inconvenient lie in reference to Gore's discredited propaganda film. We should tell the truth, CO2 will benefit the Earth. It will also be a major boon to humanity, he explained, noting that experiments show plants grow better and faster when CO2 levels are doubled, tripled, and even quadrupled. Indeed, in the Earth's past, CO2 concentrations were found in thousands of parts per million rather than hundreds, as we have today, Dr. Happer explained. And yet, Gore's newest cabal claims that humanity must slash its emissions of CO2. Each living person exhales about 2 pounds of the life-giving gas each day, by almost 50% over the next 2 decades. By the second half of the century, they want humans to produce zero net emissions, the report said. According to the crony capitalists in their report, that should be accomplished using a number of different strategies, especially involving policy frameworks that centrally plan economic activity, redistribute humanity's wealth to Gore and his cronies in various government-backed industries, and more. Governments and private industry coalitions should together develop roadmaps to define a clearer way forward, the report said. To accomplish the supposed goal of saving the planet from alleged man-made global warming will not be cheap, however, the etc. noted in its report. The transition to a low-carbon global economy will require significant additional energy system investments, around $600 billion per annum, compared with a business-as-usual scenario, noted the report, conveniently backed and funded by the very people who would be transferring those significant additional investments from your pockets into their bank accounts. The etc. also claimed that those additional investments of around $300–600 billion per annum would not pose a major macroeconomic challenge. In other words, hand over the money. It won't be that painful. Estimates suggest governments already squander over $1 billion in tax money every single day on climate. Another key element of the agenda is what the etc. report touts as carbon pricing, described in the report as an explicit, predictably rising, forward price curve for carbon, resulting from policy. Such a price would increase the price consumers pay for just about everything, from electricity and gasoline to groceries and household goods. Basically, it is another way of fleecing the public under the guise of saving the earth. It was not clear from the report whether human breathing would also be subject to the carbon price imposed on emissions of the gas of life. Other public policies the etc. demanded included subsidies for crony businesses, more government intervention to redesign markets, more regulations, and central planning in transportation and energy. Those costs would produce alleged benefits that anyone with even a basic understanding of CO2 or basic science would know to be totally fraudulent. For example, the etc. claimed the sought-after transition to zero net CO2 emissions would produce dramatically improved local air quality leading to longer and healthier lives. However, any scientist knows that CO2 does not harm air quality at all. It is an odorless, transparent, and completely non-toxic gas exhaled by humans and needed by plants. In fact, farmers pump it into their greenhouses to increase crop yields, and soda manufacturers put it in their drinks. The establishment media sometimes uses images of black smoke to illustrate global warming and CO2 articles, but those images have nothing to do with CO2 and should be considered dangerous deception and propaganda. The crony capitalists, Chinese communists, the AstroTurf front groups, and their government-linked partners in crime also brag about how they all agree on the agenda. The etc. commissioners not only agree on the importance of cutting carbon emissions, but also share a broad vision of how the transition to a low-carbon energy system can be achieved, they said. The fact that this agreement is possible between companies and organizations with different perspectives on and interests in the energy system should give decision-makers across the world confidence that it is possible simultaneously to grow the global economy and limit global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius, and that many of the key actions to achieve these goals are clear. Among those involved in the crony etc. alliance is former far-left U.S. Senator Timothy Vith, who famously admitted that even if the man-made global warming theory was wrong, it should still be pushed because it would help advance the statist and globalist political agenda. What we've got to do in energy conservation is try to ride the global warming issue. Then Senator Vith, who now serves as Vice President of the United Nations Foundation, was quoted as saying in a 1988 interview with National Journal, "Even if the theory of global warming is wrong, to have approached global warming as if it is real means energy conservation, so we will be doing the right thing anyway in terms of economic policy and environmental policy." Another leader of the etc. is Chinese Communist Zhao Chenwen, director of General Industrial Economy at the mass-murdering Chinese regime's ruling State Council. Like other functionaries of the ruthless and totalitarian regime, he tries to put a smiley face on Beijing's tyranny as it assumes an ever greater role in global governance with the support of globalists such as Gore. As the world's largest greenhouse gas emitter, the second largest economy and the largest population of nearly 1.4 billion people, China stands poised to shape the future of our global energy system, which in turn holds enormous implications for the global economy, Zhao wrote recently, boasting about the regime's global leadership and its savage program to force hundreds of millions of peasants into the cities at gunpoint. Other globalists also see the mass-murdering regime as the leader in climate. One of the leading financiers of Gore's etc., meanwhile, is Royal Dutch Shell, which along with the rest of crony big oil has been rapidly pushing the failed warming theory in a bid to crush competitors and extract more money from consumers. As the online Daily Caller reported, Shell is a major producer of natural gas, which the company bills as a way to fight global warming. Not coincidentally, the etc. calls for a rapid decrease in unabated coal consumption, a peak of oil in the 2020s and a continued role for gas-provided methane leakages are reduced significantly. More than a few major oil companies have pushed similar schemes. Gore's report, released on April 25, comes as more and more whistleblowers come forward exposing the blatant manipulation of data by climate scientists working for the federal government. Just this week, a top official from the Obama administration exposed the scandalous manipulation of data to dupe the public. What you saw coming out of the press releases about climate data, climate analysis, was, I'd say, misleading, sometimes just wrong, Obama Energy Department Undersecretary Stephen Koonin told the Wall Street Journal. And earlier this year, Congress began investigating allegations by federal whistleblowers who said the Obama administration was pumping out fraudulent science to support its controversial global agenda. Similar scandals have swirled around the politicized agencies for years. The latest demands from Gore and company for trillions of tax dollars were released just days before billionaires and communists held their April 29 People's Climate March. The widely ridiculed march, which brings together useful idiots inadvertently serving the interests of big government totalitarians and their big oil cronies, is demanding more government, more global governance, and less prosperity for humanity, all under the guise of dealing with climate change. But despite the establishment pressure from above via the etc., and the astroturf pressure from below by the People's Climate March, the climate scam has largely imploded. Indeed, polls show the overwhelming majority of Americans reject even the man-made warming theory, not to mention the draconian supposed solutions. And with virtually every prediction by climate alarmists being proven wrong, that trend is likely to continue. But the fight is far from over. Concerned Americans from across the political spectrum must continue to expose the warming hoax, as President Trump called it, and the totalitarian solutions that would crush liberty, national sovereignty, and economic prosperity. Trump has already taken some major steps in that direction with his recent executive order dismantling much of Obama's climate regime. But until Trump cancels the illegal UN Paris Agreement and reverses the absurd EPA finding that the gas of life is pollution, the threat remains. Americans can help neutralize it by educating themselves and their elected representatives on